If life is a journey between birth and death, then every step we take matters with every breath. And each path we follow leads us somewhere or to someone to walk beside. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground, when we reach for each other with our hearts. We're on holy ground. If we are all pilgrims between here and there, then everyone we meet matters each day we share. And no one's a stranger, just a brother or a sister we didn't know. We're on holy ground, right where we are. We're on holy ground, under these shining stars. We're on holy ground, when we reach for each other with our hearts. We're on holy ground. If there is a heaven beyond earth and sky, it's made of moments here that matter with you and I. There's no destination,
Good afternoon. Welcome to Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church for this service of remembrance and celebration of the life of Marion Torchia. At this time, I invite you to greet your neighbors in the chat by sharing where you're joining us from. We gathered this afternoon just as people have gathered for thousands of years at the death of a loved one, a member of the family, the tribe, to mourn and to grieve. We gather in this time made sacred by our presence and by our memories of Marion and the holy, known by many names, in which we live, move, breathe, and have our being. We gather from different places. We are at different stages in our journey through life. Our paths are varied. We look at life in different ways. But one thing we have in common: Marion's life has been woven into each of our own lives in so many ways. Our experiences of her now transformed into memories afloat on a sea of great love. We remember the words of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry. Bit by bit, nevertheless, it comes over us that we shall never again hear the laughter of our friend, that this one garden is forever locked against us. And at that moment begins our true mourning, which, though it may not be rending, is yet a little bitter. For nothing in truth can replace that companion. Old friends cannot be created out of hand. Nothing can match the treasure of common memories, of trials endured together, of quarrels and reconciliations and generous emotions. It is idle, having planted an acorn in the morning, to expect that afternoon to sit in the shade of an oak. We come together then in sorrow for our loss, in mourning for what once touched and loved is now beyond touching, though not beyond loving, in celebration of the grasp of life made more secure for the presence, certain though fleeting, of one another, in courage, ever tested and ever renewed, that we shall journey alone, yet with one another, through the days alike of joy and sadness which lie ahead. And finally, in love, life's greatest expression, which survives even death, our love for Marion, for her beloved husband of 53 years, Dennis, her children, Ellen, Paul, and Claire, and their families, her brother Ralph, and her family of friends. Our love compels us to fashion a service of celebration, because we are glad Marion lived and that her life touched and transformed our lives. It is always difficult to say goodbye to a beloved wife, mother, grandmother, a colleague, friend, and longtime beloved member of our church community. Marion and Dennis were longtime members of Cedar Lane, deeply involved in the life of the church and generous supporters of its mission and ministry for many years. But this afternoon, through words and stories, music and song, we will weave together the life of Marion Torchia, knowing that the fullness of her life cannot be fully captured in an hour. In doing so, we celebrate the life that she lived, the loves that she cherished, the values that she stood for, the causes that she supported, and the communities that she helped build. In this way, we hope to inspire each one of us to do the same. And so we turn aside from our accustomed ways and turn our faces again toward the face of the one whose life we remember and celebrate today with gratitude and love. Welcome. In the Unitarian Universalist faith tradition, it is customary to open our time together with the lighting of the chalice. The flame we light is an ancient symbol of transformation, and the chalice that it holds is a symbol of community, love, and service. As Marion's grandchildren kindle the chalice in her memory, let us join them in sharing the chalice lighting words on screen.
In our time of grief, we light a flame of sharing.
The flame of ongoing life and love that endures beyond death.
In this time when we search for understanding and serenity.
In the face of loss, we light this sign of our quest for truth, meaning, and community.
Marion was born in the Bronx, New York on September 10, 1941 to Ralph C. Kettling and Anna C. Deary. Marion's brother Ralph was born 5 years later. Marion loved languages and history, and it was this love that drew her to university with the goal of becoming a college professor. She graduated in 1963 from the Ursuline College of New Rochelle, then went on and earned a PhD in classics and ancient history from Yale University in 1969. Now, Marion and Dennis met in graduate school at a Halloween party given by mutual friends. They danced the night away. When they first met, they had a hurdle to traverse, and it was related to religious issues. Marion was a Catholic and Dennis was a lapsed Catholic. They managed to traverse that issue and many others in the years that they were together. They became engaged at a romantic Pancake House parking lot proposal in New Haven and married on July 8th in 1967. Together, they moved to Boston, New Jersey, and finally to Maryland in 1971. Their first child, Ellen, was born in 1969 while they were in the midst of planning a major move, and in 1975, twins Paul and Claire were born. Family meant the world to Marion. She took years away from full-time career working part-time outside the home to care for her children and later her father. Her curious mind also brought her back to school in 2000 when she earned another master's degree, this one in ethics with a focus on healthcare issues from the University of Maryland, Baltimore County. She brought her values and ethics to her more than 30-year career in healthcare communications and government relations to a variety of organizations, including the American Hospital Association, the Healthcare Financial Management Association, the Pharmaceutical Industry Trade Association, PhRMA, the Mental Health Association of Maryland, and the Federal Agency for Healthcare Research and Quality. Marion was always willing to get the job done, to network and make sure that if there was a worthwhile cause, that she was doing what needed to be done to move the issues forward. At Cedar Lane, Marion was a leader on the board of trustees in adult education programming, and she was a model of living with integrity. Marion listened to people deeply, let them know that they mattered, and called them to be better in a loving and no-nonsense way. She also served many organizations outside of Cedar Lane, teaching English as a second language and serving several terms on the board of directors at the Grosvenor Park 3 Condominium Association. Of all of her loves in life, Marion loved her family most. When I would visit, she would show me this photo of her grandchildren in t-shirts with numbers on their shirts, and she loved that photo. She loved her husband, Dennis, her children, and her grandchildren.
I am grateful for the life I was privileged to share with Marion. We were married for almost 53 years. She graced my life, and I miss her more than I can express in words. About 6 years ago, shortly after she turned 70, Marion was deeply moved by a poem entitled Lines and Circularities by Howard Nemeroff. The poem inspired her to think about what endures after death, and she wrote a response to Nemeroff, which ends with the following lines. The echoes of the music in your poem have lifted me up, swung me around, carried me out to the edge of God's world, a ride on an amusement park spaceship. But it's dark out there, and the song will soon end. And so I prick up my ears to listen for a sound, a word, a sign that something will endure.
Hi, I'm Ellen Trader. I'm Marion's daughter. And I want to share with you some memories I have of my mom that connect to some memoirs that she wrote. She was part of a memoir group and shared these memoirs with me as she wrote them. But now I feel so fortunate to have this collection of memoirs that give me a view of her inward feelings. As I read through my mom's memoirs recently, I remember her adventurous spirit. But I also noticed that even though on the outside she appeared adventurous, she often felt reserved on the inside. The wonderful thing about having these memoirs is I now have this inward view of her childhood, parenthood, and retirement. I think when being reserved, my mom was being selective. She chose to spend her time on what mattered to her. And what mattered to her was spending time with family and friends and devoting her energy to causes that made a difference. My mom wrote a memoir about her childhood, which reminds me of her incredible memory. She writes about her childhood friends in such vivid detail. I'm not aware that she kept a diary, but she writes these memoirs as if they're directly out of a childhood diary entry. Here's one example. Virginia Marie Lewis, a fair-skinned redhead who became my best friend in high school, had a Welsh Protestant fireman father and an Irish Catholic mother. She was the eldest of 6 children in a highly organized, determinedly upbeat, and warmly Catholic family. I spent a lot of time hanging out in Virginia's apartment and was a guest several times at the family summer cabin in Ball Pond near Danbury, Connecticut. 6 of my mom's 6th grade friends founded the Fin, Fur, and Feather FFF Club. This was a club that united them in their shared love of animals. They would get together on weekends in one another's shared apartment and just hang out. Eventually, in the 8th grade, they went to the Radio City Music Hall. So took a trip from the Bronx all the way to Manhattan by themselves, watched a matinee, and then had lunch at the Child's Restaurant. My mom wrote about the value the Fin, Fur, and Feather Club provided during her adolescent years. She said it provided a stopgap social life, and her friends were united in their shared enthusiasm. In a memoir, my mom mentioned that in graduate school in the 60s, she wasn't quite as adventurous as some of her peers, both socially and culturally. But she did take one big risk and embarked on a pretty big adventure in marrying my dad. My mom gave us all the travel bug. She took me to London when I was in middle school to go on a conference with my dad. She visited me in Florence with my sister in college, but no trip was a bigger adventure than the trip we all took to Japan. I taught English in Japan right after college, and the town I taught English in was so small we couldn't find it on the first map of Japan we looked at. We eventually found a more detailed map and found the town. The town of Yabu was a town of 26,000 people. I had a small rental car and I drove it all around the country. I was really looking forward to having my family come visit. When my dad couldn't make it, my mom decided to come anyway and brought my brother and sister. The 4 of us traveled around Japan, and it was such a great adventure. I'm so glad my mom took the risk of taking this adventure with us. My mom wrote about the trip to Japan in a memoir and described it as mind-expanding. My mom often described herself as unathletic, but she was tough. She traveled all around the country and the world with my dad on tons of hiking trips, and she was a lifelong swimmer. She would come to visit us at Lake Sylvia in my second home of Minnesota, and she would don a mask and snorkel, step into the lake, and swim with enthusiasm. I loved how she embraced the things we loved. This made the world so much bigger for all of us. In retirement, my mom spent a lot of time with the grandkids. She loved the grandkids, and the feeling was very mutual. She was a great grandma, and we're all grateful to have had her. Of course, my mom was ambitious, always, and spending time with the grandkids was one piece of her retirement, but she also spent time on causes that mattered to her. And one of these causes was teaching English. She taught this English class with a colleague, and over time, enrollment in the class dropped due to some factors that were beyond their control. Still, they both decided not to let this stop them. They didn't let the lower enrollment get them down. Actually, they decided to look on the bright side of things. My mom gave me this truly great gift of this wonderful collection of memoirs, which I'll continue to read. It helps me remember her spirit, her energy, her fun and enthusiasm. And I think this is how she really came full circle. She embraced life, she engaged, she loved people and activity, and we all loved her very much and miss her so much.
I'd like to offer a few memories of my friend Marion Torchia, a few lasting impressions of a remarkable person. Marion was very authentic, smart, conscientious, charmed by the pursuit of knowledge, stoked by curiosity, humbled by all that she did not know, and inspired by the wisdom of women and men across the ages. As much as anyone I've ever met, She was drawn to the rigors of intellectual life. She liked the world of ideas. She had a sense of humor, and she was fun to be around. She gave back. She had high standards. A Unitarian Universalist who was raised Catholic, she did not shy away from taking issue with the church, any church. Marion was resilient. She was a doer. I think of her involvement with the Sunday Morning Forum and the Kickler Lecture Series on ethics. I recall her working with her friend Elaine Swank to create a number of Friday evening jazz services. At Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church, the deeper paths of my journey crossed with Marion's in two ways. We were part of a dinner discussion group that met regularly in one another's homes for over a decade, and that was a very rich experience. Once we took our show on the road to the salty shores of Ocean City, Maryland. Another time, we went in the other direction for a weekend to freshwater Deep Creek Lake. These were delightful bonding experiences. The other deep well that we dove into was a small group get-together that met twice a month, as I recall, for 2 hours on Saturday mornings in the Chalice House, formerly the Parsonage. We usually had a theme, and we came at the theme through poems we had discovered. As one of our members said back then, poetry can be a way to help you drill deep quickly. Marion was also a scholar. Many examples. In 2014, she shared with our dinner discussion group an article she had written that was published in the Harvard Divinity School Bulletin entitled The Prophetic Vocation of Julia Budens. Budens was a former Roman Catholic nun and classics teacher of Marion's at the College of New Rochelle in New York in the early 60s. She spent her life, her creative life, addressing dense religious issues, as I recall, and so learned about, most notably through the writing of a single, get this, 2,200-page poem in 5 volumes entitled The Gardens of Flora Bone. Marion related to Budens' religious focus and enjoyed the common ground of sharing, quote, as she said, an esoteric academic discipline with someone else. In April 2019, Marion presented a PowerPoint presentation to Cedar Lane Science and Religion Group entitled, Could You or I Be a Stoic? Now, these are just two among many examples of how deeply Marion searched for knowledge and meaning. I'd like to finish my tribute by returning to poetry, Marion's poetry, that is based on someone else's poem by the same title, Follow Me Here. Originally written by Mel Bell-Lynn, here are a few lines from Marion's version of a poem entitled, When All the Doors of the World Are Shut, Update 2007. She used Mel Bell-Lynn's poem as a springboard for her own thoughts, and when excerpts go like this. When all the doors of the world are shut, where will I be? Locked in or locked out? Locked out on the pike with a cardboard sign, lost all connections, please help. Locked out by email that doesn't respond, by phones that don't ring, by people polite and friendly who decline to pursue a connection. Locked in at the office by unending process, by meetings to set agendas for meetings and more and more. What to do? Can we blast out the doors of the tomb from inside? Will small gestures help of active or passive resistance? Should we disable the locks, give out spare keys, hold open the doors? Let's claim at least a degree of freedom for me and for you. Thank you, Marion.
Just before my mom died, she promised that she would haunt me. She said this in that Marion Torchia way, sincerely, but with a twinkle in her eye. I knew that she meant it, and it made me feel better. This is not goodbye. As it turns out, she's with me every day. She's with me every day as soon as I wake up. She's with me every day as soon as I wake up several hours after she would have, and decide that it is way too early to go for a swim. 5:30 every morning, she would go swim laps at the JCC. She did this for years. She did it with a full-time job, a long commute, and 3 kids. When she developed a neck injury, she just started swimming with a face mask and a snorkel. Colon cancer set her back, but only for a bit. Before long, she was back in the pool. Every day I wake up and I marvel at this. When I do make it to the pool, a late-in-life hobby that also connects me with her, I am reminded of her devotion to hard work, structure and habits, and to striking a balance between physical activity and cerebral pursuits. She imparted with me a healthy dose of Chicken Little in her career advice. She pushed me to get a graduate degree, emphasizing the importance of having a profession. She encouraged me to stay in the workforce after I had my first son, Simon, for lots of reasons. The possibility of the sky falling among them. I am gainfully employed, healthy, and safe. I can provide my family stability at a time when many cannot. Now, as the sky really does seem to be falling, I'm grateful to her for her pragmatism. Though my mom was realistic and knowledgeable enough to remind me how harsh the world can be, she had an amazing, reassuring attitude when it came to her own illness. During a time when she had the most reason to panic or to give up hope, she was a source of comfort and stability for the rest of us. She was tough. As an attorney, my day involves a lot of writing, and every day as I struggle for that perfect turn of phrase or word, I know that she would have had it. She would have even given me the etymology based on a lifetime of studying Greek, Latin, and German. One time, I remember asking her the origin of a phrase, and she did not immediately give me an answer. I thought I had stumped her. But then she said simply and confidently, "It is not known." That is very different from "I don't know." She really had a Merriam-Webster quality about her. In addition to speaking several languages, my mom spoke a pretty unique version of English. Sometimes my family accuses me of spouting off another Marion Torchia-ism. Until my husband coined this term, I hadn't really appreciated that not everyone burns the candle at both ends, bites off more than they can chew, cuts off their nose to spite their face, or looks a gift horse in the mouth. And I'm known to accuse people of being long in the tooth or 3 sheets to the wind, so I guess I'm a chip off the old block. And with friends like me, you don't need enemies. I've learned many colorful words from my mother too, which has resulted in me being the primary and perhaps the only contributor to the family swear jar. I have my mom to thank for my interminable potty mouth. I encounter my mom whenever I open my children's books. I see her careful inscriptions to them, signed and dated. She had a real gift for choosing children's books, and she put a lot of thought and care into this process. She taught me to appreciate the illustrations, the words, and the deeper meanings. The books she picked for my boys do not talk down to them. Instead, they presumed my boys could and would appreciate nuance, abstraction, and a touch of sarcasm. And they do. My mom always had her nose in a dense book. Poetry, fiction, ethics, German, Greek, you name it, she read it. Watching my son Simon tear through True Grit, a book that she gave him when he asked her for one of his favorites, and seeing Charlie fly through Dog Man, A Tale of Two Kitties, I know that my mom is cheering them on. The last thing my mom enjoyed reading were the texts, emails, letters, and cards she got when she finally told friends and family that she was going into hospice. These notes captured distant memories, expressed appreciation for her qualities and her quirks, and came pouring in many at a time. She was so proud of these communications, and she should have been. They told her of a life fully lived and a woman deeply loved. In closing, I'd like to leave with you my family's favorite Marion Torchia-ism. She inscribed it in one of Simon's books. Time flies like an arrow. Fruit flies like a banana.
Marion was an admirable person, well prepared, kind, gracious, but strong-willed, a person unwilling to waste her time. There is a long-running memoir writing group that meets at Cedar Lane. Marion was a beloved member. The group of 10 is mostly women and mostly retired. We are people who want to reflect on our life in an organized way. We get prompts from a facilitator, for example, describe a walk you take now or used to take on a regular basis. Our pieces take 4 or 5 minutes to read, and after each reading, there is a brief discussion. Twice a month, slices of our life histories emerge. I learned where Marion grew up, her childhood difficulties when her mother was ill, and her transition from academia to office employment. A piece she read to the group on June 20, 2016, still looking for work at this late date, had a big effect on me. She wrote, "I need to be out and about, in contact with my fellow human beings. I also need to be doing something useful, something that someone else appreciates. But as old age advances, I also find that there are many things I no longer want to do, if I ever did. You won't find me organizing a rummage sale, for example." She keeps writing there. "Anyway, for the last 2 years, I've been engaged in a search for the right mix of volunteer activities. It's a happy search, something of an adventure. I'm grateful for the freedom to try things out and, if necessary, remove myself from situations that aren't working. After all, no one is paying me anymore." Helping immigrants learn English was something she wanted to do. She found a downtown English center with funding from the district. At first, classes went well, but then, she wrote, "Things began to go downhill. After one term, the students were shuffled about for no apparent reason. We were given a new, larger group and placed in a smaller classroom with horrible acoustics. If we turned off the air conditioner so that we could hear one another, we roasted. The textbook was also changed to one with massive editorial problems, confusing text, excessive cross-references, and references to online resources that were unattainable. Students began to complain and finally to disappear. There seemed nothing we could do to turn the situation around." Marion looked for a different volunteer opportunity and found one. She explained, "My daughter's father-in-law told me that the parents at the school where he was volunteering, Glen Haven Elementary School in Wheaton, were hoping to start an English conversation club. He put me in touch with the school counselor and we created a program from scratch. I was given a classroom, a set time to meet, an electronic whiteboard with a computer, and a supply basket. The counselor publicized the program and managed enrollment. One of the parents, who was proficient in English, offered babysitting so her friends could attend. We were off and running." Marion continued in her memoir, "I quickly found that I needed to get down to a basic level, so that's what I did. I used pictures and pantomime and an English in everyday life conversation book and invented silly conversations just so that the students could open their mouths and say something. They began to have fun. They gave me a surprise thank you luncheon last week. I'm committed for the next school year." After hearing Marion's memoir in June of 2016, I told her I was interested in helping in the fall. My daughters attended Glen Haven. It was in my neighborhood, and like Marion, I wanted to help immigrants with English. I worked with her for the next 2 years, meeting at 9 a.m. once a week when parents joined us in a small conference room after dropping off their children. We had fun. Marion got under the table to demonstrate under and walked out the door to illustrate outside. We were giving these students, as few as 2 and as many as 12, an opportunity they could not easily get elsewhere. We were also helping them establish a connection with their children's school. Most important, we were sending a welcoming message to immigrant communities. As an assistant teacher who followed Marion's lead, I decided not to carry on by myself when Marion and her co-teacher Regina Sims faced health problems. But inspired by Marion and channeling her determination, I pursued assisting at the Gilchrist Immigrant Resource Center in Wheaton. The last time we spoke, at the Cedar Lane Alliance Luncheon days before her death, I told Marion I was on the regular schedule at Gilchrist, assisting a trained teacher and again helping my immigrant neighbors in Wheaton. It was a rewarding experience once a week until in-person classes were suspended due to coronavirus. I will continue volunteering at Gilchrist for as long as I am productive and appreciated, while keeping Marion's last words in the June 2016 memoir firmly in mind, as she wrote, "It may be that there's no perfection in life, but it's also true that there are better and worse volunteer opportunities. I am willing to be flexible, but I'm no longer willing to endure total frustration. I'll try first to make myself heard, but if that fails, I'll vote with my feet."
I climbed out of bed on 2 strong legs. It might have been otherwise. I ate cereal, sweet milk, ripe, flawless peach. It might have been otherwise. I took the dog uphill to the birchwood. All morning long, I did the work that I love. At noon, I lay with my spouse. It might have been otherwise. We ate dinner together at a table with silver candlesticks. It might have been otherwise. I slept in a room with paintings on the walls and planned a day just like today. But I know someday it will be otherwise. Hello, my name is Carol Zachary. This is the last literary exchange Marion and I had. She wanted to read this to me, but she told me to go get my own copy at the library because even though she had just days to live, she had a lot of reading to do of Jane Kenyon. Marion and I met years ago working on committees for Cedar Lane Unitarian Universalist Church. The last committee we worked on together was the Forum Committee, where she shared the triumvirate presidency with Karen Lerner and Dusty Kreisberg, but ultimately it fell on Marion's shoulders. Once a month, the Forum Committee would gather and try to plan 3 months ahead for 36 speakers and 36 subjects. Ideas would fly. Dates and logistics and subjects and people and problems. And then at 5 minutes before the top of the hour, Marion would say, she'd have this quick intake of breath. Okay. And that was our cue to quiet. And then the magic would happen. She would turn and say, all right, now you're going to talk with so-and-so and get 2 dates or try to solidify one. And if you get that one, then you call this person. But if you get the second one, then you call that person. Then you get back to me, but this person then needs to call this one. All of a sudden, all these bits and pieces of information that we had been tossing out melded in this incredible mind of hers. It was like a prism, and a ray of sunlight hit, and then she sent us out into the world with our assignments, all of us carrying a different color. In other words, getting our speaker for 3 months hence. It was an amazing production to watch. She did it with integrity and humility and intelligence and a matter-of-factness that was absolutely devoid of any ego. What incredible management and leadership. But something else I want to share with you about Marion is that we met every month or two for lunch for many years, except in the summers. When we did, we solved the world's problems. The world didn't know about it. We never advertised it, but we did solve the world's problems. And we talked about our families. Paul, Claire, Ellen, trust me, your secrets are safe with me. She loved her grandchildren. We talked about church politics and church policies and governance. And inevitably, something would cause us to laugh. Our funny bones would knock against each other, and all of a sudden we would find ourselves in full-throated laughter, time and time again. We would grip hands or arms if we were in church and this happened to us, and then the next day we would be sore. But what a gift. She was my laughing friend. I don't think she was particularly funny, but she found the funny in things. And we could laugh so easily together. I miss Marion. I miss Marion's laugh. I miss laughing with Marion. And I feel so extraordinarily fortunate, as I'm sure you do, to have known this incredible woman.
Hello, my name is Paul. I am Marion's son, for those of you who haven't met me, and I'm here to talk about my mom. So my dad would tell you that although my last name happens to be Torchia, I am at heart a Kettling. And I'm not sure he meant that as a compliment, but there couldn't be a bigger one in my view. My dad, I'm sure, was referring to the fact that I am loud, opinionated, and a bit of a pain in the ass. And those are Kettling virtues, and I share them with my grandfather and my mom and my Uncle Ralph, and I think those are good things. People can disagree about that, but my mom went so much further. My mom was a complex person that embodied so many virtues that had a huge impact on me and Claire and Ellen, that it's impossible to capture and describe them to you in a talk like this. A lot of you knew her, And so what I'm going to try to do is give you some impressions about a couple of those areas that made a big impression on me. So my mom was really, really the rock of our family. She was, my dad was at the lab 70 hours a week, writing papers, doing research, important things for our family and for himself and for his career. But what that meant is that my mom took care of everything. She took care of the bills. She took care of the details of our education. And most importantly, when it came time to defend the family, or one of us, it was my mom that was at the first line. And I remember countless conversations where my mom is on the phone fighting with the telephone company, or someone sending us a bill that we didn't deserve, or fighting with one of my teachers who wanted to throw me out of school, which happened many times, or put me on Ritalin, which happened many times. My mom was always our advocate, and she was very, very tough, very fair and rational, but very tough. My mom did not let anyone mess with her. She was highly organized, and I cannot remember a situation when anyone got through her. She was a rock, and she taught me, and she taught my sisters the lessons that are so valuable in how we deal with the world. I think it's a huge attribute to all of our success. And I know it rubbed off on me. I can think of Ellen and me have skills I think that we would not have if it weren't for our mom. We do fine in the world. We deal with adverse situations. And I can tell you that nobody messes with Claire. So my mom was a rock, and she was a rock for our family, and that made a big, big deal for us. And I'm not sure if that's something that any of you would have been exposed to, but she really did handle absolutely everything. That aspect of her personality is contrasted in a lot of ways with her humor. My mom was funny as shit. My mom was very funny, forever. There was no person or thing or subject matter or issue that was not available for my mom to laugh at. In other words, everything was fair game to be made fun of, including herself. My mom, I remember that. She always approached everything with humor, and always approached tough things in life with humor all the time. She's had issues with her career that she approached with humor, issues with me and my dad that she approached with humor. It was always her approach, never, and I think it's a Kettling approach, and I'm glad to share it myself, just like her grandma Margaret Kettling. Life isn't all meant to be fair to you. She laughed at things. It was a big, big strength of hers. Rubbed off on me and my sisters. We approached life that way. There's no subject that me and my sisters don't laugh about. And my mom was very funny all the way up to the end. She was cracking jokes throughout that illness, months in advance of it, all the way up to the very end. She told my sister Claire that she would haunt her. That was my mom. My mom was like that throughout her life. And it lent a lightness to a very effective and brilliant and compassionate and warm person that was just a great attribute that I value a lot in her and in me and my sisters. And the last thing I want to get across, if I can, of all the attributes you've heard about my mom from Claire and Ellen and the others I just mentioned, at bottom, my mom was a loving, loving person. She loved the world. She really did. She was positive and loving, including to aspects of the world that were a pain in her ass. Starting with my grandfather, my grandpa Ralph. I love him. He was a pain in the ass. My mom loved her dad. She loved my grandfather. My dad, you are a pain in the ass. I'm sorry, you are a pain in the ass. Mom loved you. Mom still loves you. I am a pain in the ass. I was always a huge pain in the ass from the age of, between the ages of 6 months and 1, I think I was okay. But I think between the ages of about 1.5 and 42, I was not great. My mom always loved me. I never felt anything but love from my mom. All of you here today, I'm sure, have felt my mom's love. All of you, or many of you, I am sure, are pains in the ass. My mom loved you anyway. And I remember from my youngest year, when I was a little boy, I would hold up my arms no matter what I would do. I could do the most horrible thing. If I would hold up my arms, my mom would pick me up and she'd give me a hug. So that's how she was. That's how she was. So we're Mom, we love you a great deal, and we are in your debt, and we will miss you very much.
In her poem, A Strong Woman, Marge Piercy writes, "A strong woman is a woman at work, cleaning out the cesspool of the ages, and while she shovels, she talks about how she doesn't with tears in her nose. A strong woman is a woman determined to do something others are determined not be done. She is pushing up on the bottom of a lead coffin lid. A strong woman is a woman who loves strongly and weeps strongly and is strongly terrified and has strong needs. A strong woman is strong in words, in action, in connection, in feeling. Strength is not in her, but she enacts it as the wind fills a sail. What comforts her is others loving her equally for the strength and for the weakness from which it issues, lightning from a cloud. Lightning stuns. In rain, the clouds disperse. Only water of connection remains flowing through us. Strong is what we make each other. Marion Torchia was a strong woman. She was strong in action, in connection, in feeling, and in her living and in her loving. She had a deep inner strength that had seen and overcome incredible challenges in her life. I wonder what gave her the strength to say yes to life despite the challenges that she encountered. Was it her belief in the great mystery that enfolds and embraces us, in which we live, move, and have our being? Or was it her deep conviction that there exists a deep and abiding love which will not let us go or let us down, a love that she shared unconditionally with her family, her friends, and with the world? Or was it her strong belief in life before death, that the purpose of life is to do something with this one wild and precious life, to live it fully and with zest, and not be preoccupied about what happens to us after we die? Well, whatever it was, Marion embodied strength in many different ways. It was the strength of outlook and attitude. She never gave up, never clung to hurts or kept grudges, always followed through. She was self-reliant, strong-willed, resilient, reliable, independent, intellectually keen, emotionally grounded, spiritually mature, and funny. Always there bubbled forth her sense of humor, a gentle, warm humor that laughed with and never laughed at. The poet Evgeny Yevtushenko wrote, "Not people die, but worlds die in them. They perish. They cannot be brought back. The secret worlds are not regenerated." Those who were closest to Marion, family, friends, know the world that has gone from them because of her death. The concerned, involved, smiling presence, the friendly and responsive ear, the sense of humor, the self-reliance, the holy curiosity, the deep and steady determination, the passion for justice, equality, and fairness, the loving kindness, and the inner light and spiritual depth that she exuded. And as the poet says, we make our lament against that destruction. But we also rejoice in the person she was. Marion was a spouse, a mother, a grandmother, a sister, an intellectual, an educator, a scholar, an adventurer, a traveler, a philosopher, a mystic, a reader, a lover of music, and a dear friend who left us this year. She left us as she had lived, as an active and engaged spirit who lived her life fully and died with dignity and grace. Marion's life is an example of what a difference one person makes in their community. She lived and taught a life of love, hope, joy, and service. And she will be remembered as a good, kind, ethical, moral, honest, and loyal person who did right by her family and her spiritual community. It is Marion's spirit, her essential self, lived through an engaged life of love, strength, courage, and service that will survive through time in her children, her grandchildren, and I suspect deeper into future generations. Marion is a fountainhead, a true matriarch. Dear, dear Marion, blessings on you. If not the blessings of God, then of faith and friendship and passion and beauty and love and mercy and grace. Blessed peace to you, beloved Marion. Though we shall miss you, our grief is soothed by the richness of our living memories of you and your enduring presence in those you touched. Thank you for blessing us in our lives. Would you join me now in the spirit of prayer or reflection? Nameless one of many names, eternal spirit of life, in whom our individual selves do find beginning and ending. We give thanks for the life of our friend and spiritual companion, Marion Torchia, for the work of our hands, for the thoughts of our mind, for the aspirations of her spirit, and for the affections of her heart. Let her name be inscribed on the tree of life. May our moments of memory bring to us not only an awareness of the nobility of her life, but also the self-knowledge that we too belong to the passing tide. Help us, therefore, O Spirit, in the light of her life, to seek life while it may be found, not tarnishing our brief moments with malice, bitterness, or wrongdoing, but setting our spirits on higher purpose. May we see this purpose plainly and build upon it, that the best within us may come to shine forth in our lives until we live as we are called to live, and our deeds are the answer to our prayers. In the name of all that is holy, life-affirming, and life-sustaining, we say, Shalom, Salam, Om Shanti, Amen.
It was a gift and a joy to have someone as special as Marion in our lives. Her legacy is one of love, and also it is a legacy of inspiration to become the good we wish to see in the world. And so I leave you with this charge, these words by poet Adrienne Rich. My heart is moved by all I cannot save. So much have been destroyed. I have cast my lot with those who age after age, perversely with no extraordinary power, reconstitute the world. Be extraordinary. Find the courage to reconstitute the world in Marion's memory for yourself and for generations to come.